had it on mute.
No, you stayed in attendees for a really long time because I clicked on your name and nothing happened. Here comes Peter Lowe. Okie dokie.
But I accepted and came in. I just
Sorry
was
about
on
that.
mute.
That was you, right?
Who?
That you were declining being in the meeting?
No, I did not decline.
Oh,
Never declined.
oh, okay. Well, I don't know what happened.
I don't think I've missed a meeting. I wouldn't decline.
No, I mean on Zoom.
No, I understand. No, I didn't decline.
Pat, I can't turn anybody into a panelist right now. It's the weird. Peter Levy's in. You're going to have to let him in.
Oh, you're not a co-host. That's why.
Well, then you forgot to make me an alt host.
I don't know, but you should be one now.
But that's really bizarre because I came in and fixed all the settings when I signed in at 4 o'clock.
I agree. And
But
now
Marisa's been having this problem too. We have trouble getting her into meetings. Okay, so now I still can't do anything.
I don't know. I keep asking you to be co-host. So
All right, I'll tell you what. I think I'm going to leave and come back.
it's not a big deal. But
Patrick,
yes, sir.
bunch of postponements and deferrals tonight. What was that again? It was,
There's only 3. The withdrawal we knew about, that's at 17 Livingston.
right, yeah, I got that.
The 830G number 4.
11:30, 11:43, okay.
Yeah, and then 2 Deerfields also postponing.
Oh, all the fun ones. Okay,
All right, so you're going to give me the list of who's postponed?
yeah, the 17 Livingston we knew.
Yeah, we did.
11:43 East Putnam. And 2 Deerfield.
Oh, 11:43 postponed.
Hmm.
Okay. Okie dokie. So all right, so
Waiting on Mr. Levy to join us.
2 Deerfield. All right, I'm all set now. I had to leave and come back, but at least it's okay now.
Good.
But Marisa's, we've been having trouble if I make Marisa an alternate host on, it's the town security settings that I think get us into a problem. Okay. Well, with that auspicious start, hello, everybody. And
Recording in
okay,
progress.
hello, everybody. Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Greenwich Planning and Zoning Commission being held virtually, and also virtuously. Tuesday, November. The agenda for our regular meeting is the first item is a decision item, a proposed stipulation of settlement in the matter of Calhoun Drive LLC versus the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Greenwich. Seated on this item are Yeski, Levy, Lowe, McRae, and Albin. Katie, to open, would you like to just summarize where we are, what the STIP says, et cetera, what has changed in the proposal?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So the suit was filed and the proposed settlement is a result of many months of effectively whittling the building down. It has changed substantially in height and in floor area. It is still in the same general location. And in addition to making it smaller, which is perceived to be in making it more secondary to the primary structure, which is the requirement of the regulation. There's been substantial landscaping both on Calhoun and up close to the building, which is slightly elevated from the road, therefore reducing the visual impact of the building even further. Should the commission move this settlement forward, it does have to be accepted by a judge. That does come with an opportunity for public comment at that stage also through the court system. And with that, if that's sufficient, I'll end it there.
Thank you. Nick, do you have to hand just the actual changes in the building proposal?
Yeah, actually, I just looking for another number, but over the 5 meetings, I think we started at 6,000 square feet plus or minus, and we're down to less than 2,000 now. There's a significantly more landscaping at the street. There's a significantly shorter or lower roof line. No, it actually comes to the visual impact is more of a story and a half or a story and a roof line as opposed to 2 stories when it originally started. The maximum height above the grade plane is 27 feet, whereas the original it was over 30. That was the original. The
So you're
project's
saying
been been pushed back as far as it can go, but as Mrs. DeLuca said, it's in approximately the same location, but the footprint is smaller. And the landscaping along the street is varied to provide, year-round screening without actually creating a specific dense wall of evergreen. There's going to be some visual interest there. It's still in keeping, the architecture of the building actually is still in keeping with the historic nature of the HO, the details of the original building in terms of window layouts and stone details and masonry are brought forth to this one, to the new project as proposed.
Okay,
And
so
I'm
the
sure the
building's
commission
about,
recalls that the site is limited location-wise with the large rock outcrop and where the septic can be located. And just so you know, this, as I noted yesterday, this was sent over to the director of the Wetlands Agency. And the permit that had been issued on this project is in play, and she had noted that it's even further reduced from when they reviewed it, so there would be no issue with this moving forward for a building permit.
so again, just to recap, the key is that the building is 1/3 of the original size and 3 feet lower and is more concealed because of heavier landscaping.
Yes, I think it's actually even more than 3 feet lower.
Well, you said from 30 to 27.
Yeah, but I think it's actually even more than that. And visually,
I did really good in arithmetic, huh?
it's visually actually a whole story. You could say it's a whole story shorter.
Okay. So does anybody, that was just a recap. I know you were all in the discussions as we negotiated this. But does anybody have any comment at this time? Then if that's acceptable to you, I would like to turn to public comment. Would those of you who wish to speak on this proposed settlement, please raise your virtual hands. I see someone's on the phone. In order to raise your hand on the phone, it is *9. Okay, so the first person is Hannah Grenade, and if you would please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Hannah Grenade, and I'm the resident at 11 Angus Lane.
Go ahead, please, ma'am. Ma'am?
You just muted.
I'm
oh,
sorry.
there
Yep. Yeah, it just remuted me after I unmuted myself. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak on this. My name is Hannah Grenade. I'm the resident at 11 Angus Lane and homeowner there. And I spoke also at the last time we had these hearings. I don't want to reiterate all of the points of that prior hearing. I just want to raise 2 concerns about the structure and what is being characterized as a significant reduction in the FAR. I would first just point out that in this so-called carriage house, that the elements included in this interior design are still essentially the same as a large full-scale home. This home has a mudroom, a walk-in pantry, an entry foyer, a full formal dining room, a separate eating area in addition to the kitchen. It has a full study, a full family room. These are not the properties of something that would be considered a carriage home or a secondary structure. This is still essentially a large single family home. The second thing I would point out is if I could just draw your attention to paragraph 2 in the settlement agreement, where it stipulates that any change may be made to the interior plans as long as the exterior elevation, mass bulk, and height as shown do not change. And so a lot of the change or the reduction in FAR was achieved by creating these open to below areas and eliminating the bedrooms on the second floor plan. If you look at the page marked A3 in the plans, you can see these 4 areas that have been X'd out as open to below. Based on the settlement agreement, as soon as this is approved, the builder could simply remove those, turn them back into bedrooms. We would be right back at a structure that is very close to the original size and FAR at 6,000 square feet. That would be a 5-bedroom single family home. So this is essentially still a very large single family home trying to be sited on a property that is zoned for 1 home. Thanks so much for hearing these comments.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
The next speaker is Renee Farrell. If you would please go ahead.
I live at 23 Angus Lane, and I just wanted to voice my objections again to this project. It's for all the same reasons as we went over in the hearings, whenever that was 6 months ago or so. It's the same issues that concerned me then, that concern me now, and Hannah just touched on them, which is this really seems like a separate structure because of the size, because of the placement on the property. Just all of the characteristics of it really do not feel at all like a carriage home. It feels like a house that they're trying to mask as a carriage home. And that's it. Thank you very much.
You. The next speaker is Stephanie Milligan.
Good evening, everyone on the commission, and thank you for hearing me tonight, along with some of my neighbors. And I'm Stephanie Milligan. I live at 4 Angus Lane, and I would also like to object to this proposal. I completely agree with Hannah Grenade and Renee Farrell in terms of the size aspect, which is not defined by a carriage house. So that's part of my first objection. So actually, my first objection is both the size and the location. So if I look at the whole neighborhood, and you would all agree that Calhoun Drive is a historical neighborhood. If you look at Calhoun, we have basically just Calhoun Drive, 14 houses that were built in the 1920s. If you look at all of the roads in the association, which is how we, among the area, define our neighborhood, you have Calhoun, Hobart, Upland, Angus, and Turner. And out of those, you have 19 houses, which are historical, 19 houses out of 70 houses. So there is a historical character to the neighborhood. And with this carriage house being put in terms of size, it does not fit with any type of historical measurements of what a carriage house would be. If I look at the existing properties, there are 3 carriage houses on site, and none of them are greater than, I believe, 1,200 square foot, which means it's just a side building that can be used for any type of either just housing staff or potentially renting it. But at the end of the day, it's a small structure, not a main residence, which is labeled as a second residence actually in the proposed plan. And the second aspect also is the location of that carriage house. Carriage houses historically are located next to the main house. This house, which again is a big separate structure, is actually placed completely separately from the main structure on a piece of land that could be, when you just drive by, or if you were to drive up that driveway, could be a complete separate piece of land. So down the road, the house is there. You could argue that actually 2 separate legal entities could end up owning that property. And actually that takes me into my next point. We have that concept of historical overlay, which is being used by the developer to try to put that second house in. And it's somewhat ironic because here is the concept, oh, we want to do something historic. We want to actually keep the main house, but we're actually putting something that is very modern and is going to change the whole character of the neighborhood, which is a historic neighborhood, which has history, which has not only a history dating back to the 1900s when it was built, but which also has a history today. And it's a history that all of us who have bought into the neighborhood feel is a very strong identity of the neighborhood. And that's why we decided to live in that neighborhood. And basically, if you start opening up the door to having a second major residence on such a piece of land, I did some quick statistics, and you'll have to, excuse my inaccuracies in the sense that I know that I don't have all the FARs for each and every of the properties. But if I look at just Calhoun Drive, there are 22 houses on it. 14 were built in the 1920s. It's 63% of their houses. You open up the door to having that one house, that one carriage house added. Suddenly, we're going to have another 13 potential new homes added to all of the other properties because they can definitely use the historical overlay. And that in just basically a couple of years will mean that the neighborhood is completely different. You're just deciding today, not just on adding one house, but you're basically deciding on whether you're going to change the identity of the whole neighborhood, which consists of 70 houses, 70 people who have actually bought houses which are quite expensive, and we're it's grateful to live in Greenwich and be able to afford them. But the truth is we bought into a certain sense of identity, a certain sense of a neighborhood. And your decision will be affecting each and every one of us and how we enjoy that neighborhood on a daily basis. And that for me is very ironic because you will be going against the whole concept of keeping a historic sense to what Greenwich is as an identity for many of us, and more specifically to our neighborhood. So I would urge you to vote against that permit. I understand it's a settlement. I feel a bit surprised to have heard about it only a few days ago when we've had such major objections with actually 80% of the neighborhood being against it, and none of you reached out to us to let us know there was a settlement on the side. So I am actually quite disappointed by the whole process.
Okay, so I'm going to answer some of your points. The simplest one is we've all driven around the neighborhood many times, and there are secondary structures that are down by the street in your neighborhood. They're not many, but there are some, and they're down by the street, and we all noted that. The reason,
if
okay,
I may?
ma'am, if you
Yes.
would let me finish, thank
Okay.
you. The second thing is, we are not making a momentous decision tonight in terms of all of town. The existing regulation allows a second structure to be added in this manner if the existing historic house is being restored. This was a regulation that was approved several years ago. And it isn't that we are changing the rules for Greenwich. This rule has been in place. Katie, when was the new HO regulation approved?
Well, the original one has been since the 80s.
The new one.
And it's been amended as time has gone on many times actually, but recently I think it was 2017.
So it's been in place for 4 or 5 years, this regulation that would allow a second structure. So we're not taking the step tonight for the first time of allowing a second structure on the property. The original reason we denied it was because we were uncomfortable with it being set where it was set and the scale of the building. Although Ms. Grenade expressed discomfort with the interior, we don't regulate the interior of a building. What we regulate is the mass of it and how it looks. And that is from 6,000 square feet to 2,000 square feet. So it is a huge change, huge. Having myself made that move from a house at 6,000 square feet to one at 2,000 square feet, I can tell you it is enormous change. So what The interior may have some of the same amenities, but it is significantly. And this last thing is about us operating mysteriously. When we are under litigation, when we are sued, we have to negotiate. We discuss the lawsuit and we negotiate that we do the negotiation alone. The commission has a right to do what's called an executive session, and we post the fact that we're having an executive session, and we post what the topic of the session is. So if you look at it, you could see that a couple of weeks ago we discussed 21 Calhoun. But by law, we are able to do that, and we are not required to send out individual notices. We make every effort to be transparent, but we are not required to send you a notice. So those are the things I would tell you. We were all concerned. There were many concerns, and we agreed with you about the scale of this building and where it was set and what the impact was going to be in your neighborhood. And that was why we denied it the first time. But we have been working on reducing that, a third the size of the original. Even though it may have a dining room, it's still a third the size. So those are my answers to you, Madam, and you wanted to respond.
Yes, if I may. Thank you very much, Chairwoman Alban. You're right. There are other houses by the street, but there are other houses by the street which are the main house on the property, on properties that may not have quite enough land or were historically put there. In that case, you're putting a second major residence by the street, which is very different than having just one house by the street and having lots of land on the top to go with it. On your second point of the HO,
no, ma'am. You have properties that have a second building on the street. There are properties in your neighborhood that have a second building on the street, and the main house is set back. We've all seen them. We've been in your neighborhood more times than you would imagine. We've been driving around it, and the rest of the commission, you're welcome to chip in. I know you're letting me go ahead, but go ahead, ma'am.
So if I can respond to that, there are 3 properties that have
exactly
a house, and 3 of them are right, is slightly on the road, but they're historical. They were put there a long time ago, and it's not a decision that's being done now. And as I said earlier, those carriage houses are no greater than 1,000 square foot. And here you're talking not about a 2,000 square foot house, but about 3,000. It's 2,600. And if you add what's below, you obviously have living space that is used all the time, which is greater than 3,000 square feet. So the size issue remains. And I think when you mentioned the historical overlay, you have to look at it not in an absolute sense, but in a relative sense. So you're saying, well, you're just looking at the house in that one case, but the truth is that you're trying, or the idea of the regulation is to save old homes and not have them destroyed and give anyone who buys them an economic opportunity to make money out of the situation. Unfortunately, when you have an entrepreneur or a builder taking that in, they take it to the max and try to increase their revenue as much as possible, and they don't take into account the neighborhood. And this, I think, is a blatant case of such abuse. So I do think that the historical overlay also needs to look at how, or the decision that's being made under that regulation needs to look at the impact on the neighborhood and not just be actually decided in isolation just about the house and the piece of land. So that would be my final comments. And thank you,
ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. Our next speaker.
Ms. Alva, before we move on, I think actually it's one thing to keep in mind is that the property owner, I think, is mindful of the historic nature of the existing building, but also has the opportunity, if they wanted to actually tear the whole thing down and build more than 10,000 square foot of house.
Yes.
I think that's maybe a fact that actually has been lost in what we're talking about here tonight.
Our next speaker is Jeff Pribble. Sir, if you would go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Jeff Pribble. I live at 17 Calhoun Drive, and I'd like to register my opposition to the planned subdivision for all the reasons that my neighbors have cited. 2 things I just wanted to point out and clarify. As you may recall, and it was alluded to earlier, but just for the record, we're not talking about there's a few neighbors here that have studied this proposal and have followed it for the past couple of years, but there's unanimous opposition by every single neighbor in the entire association. There's not a single person, aside from the owner of the property, that is remotely supportive of this. So just to put that fact on the table. And then secondly, as it relates to the disclosure, I fully appreciate, in terms of the when there's a lawsuit and negotiations, things need to be kept confidential. But just for the record, and I registered this with Ms. DeLuca. If you recall, in summer of 2020, I filed a petition as an environmental intervener. And among other things associated with that, it was my understanding, based on legal guidance, and it was acknowledged by the committee at that time, that any meetings, correspondence, updates, developments as it relates to 21 Calhoun Drive, I'd be appropriately informed. And just so for the record, I received no such disclosure.
When
Yeah,
the
Mr. Pribble,
commission, go ahead.
that's that you would have to have filed an additional action with the court, because this is at a different stage now. So during the open record, the appropriate procedures were followed to acknowledge that action, but that was not filed with the courts that we were aware of.
Okay. I think I just, I'm sort of underscoring the point that you have a body of residents here that were trying to follow this as closely as they were able to do so. My mistake, whatever, my attorney's mistake that I wouldn't be informed, but so you all know, we're all just hearing about this. And, I think it's evident where the neighborhood resides on this matter.
Yes.
As I
And-
noted in the beginning, there is an opportunity and a next step here. So an opportunity to be heard by the judge who ultimately decides on any settlement that the commission may move forward. So there's an opportunity to have that discussion still.
And maybe you could reach out to Katie, Mr. Pribble, and make sure that you know exactly how to go about that. If
I
you
would actually ask not to do that, because this
Okay.
is a legal matter and I'm not an attorney, so I
Sure.
would prefer that.
Okay,
that
so
you-
your attorney would then advise you, Mr. Pribble, on how to go to the next step if we were to agree to these terms.
Okay.
If the commission was to agree. But as Mr. McRae says, there's some other options. And I know you're all really smart people. And that I don't even need to say them out loud. What other options, what other scenarios might transpire? And so when Mr. McRae mentioned one, that there are alternate scenarios for development. And we have negotiated in good faith on your behalf, because you are the town and we are the
On
town.
whose- Sorry I didn't mean to, on whose behalf?
On all of us, you as residents and we are residents. You are our neighbors. Not only are we on the commission, but we're volunteers and you are our neighbors. So when we negotiate something like this, we are negotiating for you and for the town. We're thinking about you as residents and us as residents. We all live here. So we've been trying to do the best we can for you, given the circumstances. And I'll leave it at that. But we think of ourselves as your neighbors and fellow residents, because we're volunteers. And yes, we work these crazy hours, but we are volunteers and we are here to serve the community. So with that, Mr. Pribble, I hope your attorney can fill you in on what you do next, because I have no clue. Sorry, but I know a
Thank
lot
you.
about zoning. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Leslie Hanlon. And I am coming to you. Oh, I got the wrong person, sorry. Julie Prince, just hang on a second. Leslie Hanlon was first and then afterwards is you. Leslie Hanlon, if you would go ahead. Oh, Leslie Hanlon went away. Let's try that again. Okay, Julie Prince, I am not able to. Pat, can you try Leslie Hanlon? I'm really having trouble with this tonight. Nothing's happening. And Julie Prince Ojlo, would you go ahead, please? Oops, sorry, I just muted you by accident. Okay.
Hi, Julie and Chris Hoylo. This is Chris speaking on both of our behalf. Chairwoman Albin, thanks for that sentiment, the sentiments that you just expressed. We appreciate both the sentiments as well as the time you spend. We have a very specific question. I'm wondering if somebody on the commission could respond to Hannah Grenade's, I think, very astute point about the drop through, the change to the second story design to make a significant portion of the floor plan drop through, which drop through floors could then be changed or modified after this approval process to be bedrooms, which would dramatically change the actual livable square footage of the home.
I'm not sure
Which I
what
think
you
is one of
mean.
the points that you made previously about with respect to the changes that were made.
What a couple of things. So again, we only look at the bulk and the mass from the outside. That's what we do. We are not allowed, unless the FAR isn't compliant, we're not allowed to mess around with what kind of ceilings, as long as they're legal under the building code and all that. So, but I'm not sure what you mean by drop through. You mean the 2-story foyer thing?
The square footage, as Hannah pointed out, has been changed by virtue of the fact that a significant portion of the floor plan is now drop through floors.
What's a
Which
drop
I think I can envision
What
in
do you
my
mean?
mind's eye what that means, which is to say that
Madam
floor.
Nick's
Chair,
gonna
if I
answer
may,
you.
Please go ahead.
Madam
Nick's
Chair, if I
gonna-
may,
Yes.
I think what he's talking to, on the floor plans in the second floor, you actually have a lot of areas that are open to below. Okay.
Cathedral
Thank you,
ceiling
yeah.
type.
Okay, looking at that and actually where we are with the roof line as it is today, they would be hard pressed, if not almost totally impossible, to actually put in any floor where those areas are open to below, because the roof lines themselves are so low. You actually wouldn't have floor area there because it's less than 4 feet, less than 3 feet, that kind of thing. It's very, very small. We've actually worked on these elevations and made this as small as possible. And then the area that you only really could stand up in is what's shown on the plan in terms of 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a stairway and a hall. All of those other open to below areas are under very low roofs because we've pushed the roof lines down on all sides.
And also the FAR, I don't think that they would be received very well to increase the FAR at this point. So
Well, they've got
any change to the floor area would require coming back to the commission. But more importantly, in terms of the number of bedrooms, there is a limit based on the capacity of the septic system, which is regulated by the health department. So that's a limiting factor also.
So helpful clarification. Thank you. Notwithstanding these points that were made, and thank you for those. We continue to state our strong objection to the proposed structure for all the reasons that have been stated here this evening. It is a true standalone second residence, which I think is in violation of both the spirit. I truly believe the intent of the rule, and we'll leave it at that because I think the points have been made quite well throughout the evening already. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
For Katie, perhaps. Given the concerns that we're hearing on the part of the neighbors, maybe we could clarify, but on the one hand, Margarita, you've mentioned that we're not here to comment on the interior design. On the other hand, as I think Peter Levy was just trying to say, should any interior adjustments occasion an increase in measurable FAR, which I think Katie was just addressing, that would not be allowed under any arrangement that's being proposed now, correct?
That's correct. There's, in other words, one is still required to follow the procedures outlined in the regulations. And in this case, it may be such also that the court would retain jurisdiction.
Okay.
But to the point
the other
you
thing,
make is one cannot just increase the FAR.
the other thing that I think it might be worth explaining is there's concern about this being a second house and a second ownership. And under the HO, could you explain again how this can this be carved out independent from the main house and the main property under the HO?
That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for prompting that. No, this is not a subdivision. This is a historic overlay, and overlay means that there's an additional layer, so to speak, of regulation over this particular parcel if this thing moves forward. The reason the regulation was proposed in the first place was to prevent the demolition of historic homes, which was happening at an extremely alarming rate. All kinds of incentives were explored so as to deter people from doing so, tax incentives, etc. And in the end, this is one of the options that was suggested by all kinds of people throughout the community, the Historic District Commission, members of the public, etc., those that were involved in crafting the regulation. The idea was to allow for, in fact, a second home. The regulations, forget the historic overlay, the regulations do allow for just close to the size of this one. And the idea behind this was to allow for a second residence as a way to incentivize someone to retain in perpetuity, not for a few years, 10 years, whatever, in perpetuity, that historic structure. So that's the quid pro quo here. And that was the way the regulation was proposed. There are other components of the regulation that apply in business zones, such as allowing for uses that aren't generally permitted in those zones. So we try to give something that would be of interest, because as I said, these regulations that have been in play to try to protect the historic fabric of this community date all the way back to the 80s. There was such an alarming rate of demolition, even with those incentives, that it was decided that something more had to be done. And so this is, in fact, the way the regulation, this type of development was the way this regulation was crafted. So, and it was anticipated that this would come up. Now, as has been said many times, the issue in this particular application was that it was found that it was not secondary enough, so to speak, to the primary structure. And we don't need to rehash all of that. But that was what the commission's worked on over the last several months here to try to get it to a point where they felt that it was secondary to the primary structure and still in keeping with the architecture. So a lot of time and energy was spent on the specifics, but this was the way the regulation was contemplated to allow this type of development, so as to preserve the structures.
But this secondary house, as proposed, could or could not be sold off.
It could be sold off to somebody else, but then it would be two owners owning one parcel of land. In other words, you cannot subdivide this. This is not two separate entities, two separate and distinct properties. It is one property. So if one chose to sell it off and condominiumize it, so to speak, that would be their option. But it's not designed as a separate and apart parcel.
But as far as the concerns of the neighborhood, or is there any material difference between the two? I mean, whether
yes, because having two separate and distinct parcels, just from a legal standpoint, is quite different. And there's one declaration of restrictions that applies to just one parcel of land. I mean, the whole idea behind this structure is that it's being offered as a way to retain the glory, so to speak, of the primary structure. So they are intrinsically tied.
Okay. Margaret, you're on mute.
I know. Our next speaker is Allison Troy. And for those of you who've re-raised your hands, folks, I'm really sorry, but we've got a whole bunch of stuff on the agenda tonight. We normally only give people one chance to speak. And we are giving you extensive time because we know you feel strongly about this, as did we. Ms. Troy, if you would go ahead.
Hi, Salsa Troy, I'm at 56 Calhoun. I do, has stated in the past a lot of issues with this property. But can I just ask, because I think it changes the whole characteristic of the road having such a large structure right near the road. But I have a question. In regard to one
Oh, Ms. Troy, we're having,
I think originally this.
ma'am, ma'am, we can't hear you. Ma'am, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, you're breaking up very much. May I suggest that you hang up and redial and dial in by phone? Try using cell signal instead of internet, instead of Wi-Fi?
Okay,
We've got two
let
more
somebody
people.
else speak, but
Yep, we're gonna do that. And
okay, I just want to know if it, okay, never mind, thanks.
thank you. The next speaker is Okan Azmak. And if you would go ahead, sir.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. This is Okan Azmak. My wife Lisa and I, we live on 29 Calhoun Drive, abutting the property in question. So I just want to say a couple of things. I had emailed earlier Mr. Luca, and I believe she has shared my email. And in general, we do appreciate it as volunteers. You guys are actually working with us. And the last time around, you did hear our concerns and you agreed with them. So I want to say up front, thank you for that. That was actually appreciated by us all. I think the alarm that you're hearing from us at the moment is that we just found out about this upcoming settlement last Friday or so. So we haven't really had a chance to look at the plans that are part of the settlement and really wrap our minds around it. So my question really is, does the legal process allow us any time to be able to look at what is in the settlement and raise questions about that in a little bit more timely manner, so we're not rushing to ask these questions and taking your time?
I'm gonna let Katie answer that one because she knows more about the process.
Technically, at this stage of the game, there's no requirement like there is when an application is open for the commission to have any public comment at all. So this is, for lack of a nicer way of putting it, a courtesy on behalf of the commission. As I have said, that the judge is the one who is ultimately deciding on this settlement. So really all we're doing at this stage is the applicant and the commission has agreed to something that is then moving to the next step, if you will. And that next step is the court system. So that really is your opportunity to discuss the ins and outs at that stage. And we're just, the commission's just here to either accept or reject the settlement and go from there. It's not intended at this stage at all to be a back and forth or any sort of redrawing of plans or anything like that. It's just an agreement as to what's been negotiated. And as I said, there's an opportunity later on at the deciding body, if you will, for you to reiterate your comments.
Thank you for that. May I ask one other question?
Of course, Mr. Asmak.
So earlier you mentioned that legally the owners, if there's a second structure built, they have the right to sell that second structure. If there's a change in ownership of the main house, do the new owners have an obligation to maintain it as a historic structure?
Absolutely, yes. That is the declaration runs with the land in perpetuity, does not run with the owner, so to speak.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asmak, and thank you for appreciating our position as well. Our next speaker is Jim Matthews. Mr. Matthews,
hi there.
if you would good. Hello, Mr. Matthews.
Hello, Chair Alban, and I'd like to echo my neighbors' thanks for all of your diligence around this matter and appreciate all of your time. It certainly has taken up a lot of your docket over the last couple of years.
A lot of things happen that way.
And we appreciate that. So I guess what I'm struggling with is, and I get the purpose of historic overlay and preserving these great old structures. And if this were a situation where it was a neighbor who had bought the house and lived in the house and wanted to add a carriage house, I would be more sympathetic to this. I think what troubles me is that this is a developer from out of town. If you look at their website, they advertise the fact that they exploit loopholes for subdividing properties that couldn't otherwise be done. And in this particular instance, what's trouble, we're kind of caught in the middle in that obviously we want the structure as small as possible, so it's subordinate and complementary to the main structure. And that that's the way we'd want it if it was one property. But it sounds pretty obvious that this developer is going to condominiumize this property and sell it off. So now we're stuck with a subscale home that will be sold off and, hurt our values because it's now too small a structure to be in keeping with the values of the neighborhood. So I guess my question is, could you, as part of the settlement, put in a stipulation that couldn't happen? That
Well, hold
it's got
on
to
a
be
second.
one owner.
You're going to be really glad to learn one thing. We took out the possibility of condominiumizing from our regulations. When did we do that, Katie?
Well, that, yes, 6-17.2, that was, I don't know, that really mostly applied to commercial zones.
But this said that, so they would not be able to condominiumize this lot because that 617 was the only way they could have done it.
No, that really only applied to commercial zones. That 617.2 wouldn't have applied here. The only way to do that in residential zones is through a subdivision.
And you can't subdivide this lot, Mr. Matthews. So from that point of view, and the developer's well aware of it, and that this can't be subdivided. The next thing is, the regulations don't let us question the motives of a developer. There are occasions when we see someone who is not from here or whatever, but those aren't things we can consider. It crosses your mind when you're listening to an app, but it's not. So I hear your sentiment, but it's not something that can come into our decision making. Do you want to add anything? Because you're the last one.
I guess what I'm confused about is, and maybe condominiumize it may not be even a verb, but it might not be the right verb in this situation. But I got confused because it sounded like Mr. Rosa had mentioned, Mr. Luca had mentioned that they could somehow structure this so you'd have two separate owners of the two separate structures. Did I mishear that earlier?
Katie, would you elaborate?
Can you say that again?
Can you have two separate owners? Oh, yes, there's one more speaker. I see you now. Can this be done so that there could be two owners on this lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's the way it works just from zoning standpoint is that there's one parcel of land with respect to that. That's what the historic overlay is doing. It's allowing there to be a different set of rules, so to speak. And those different set of rules come with conditions, one of which is that the house is preserved in perpetuity, and that there's a declaration of restrictions that governs what can happen with the main house and also with the new house. So as one of the other speakers had raised the issue about interior changes, and as it does note in the stipulation, that they can make those changes as long as there's no changes to the massing and bulk and height and things that the chairman has noted are under the purviews of this commission. So if one wants to sell off either the main house or the other structure, they would be doing so with the understanding, I hope, that then they have two owners of one parcel of land. I think would be unusual. We've not seen that with any of our other historic overlays, but that's not to say that would be prohibited. But it would be prohibited for them to be under the, they should not think of it as they control a certain parcel of land and the other one controls the other parcel of land. I mean, the parcel is one parcel subject to one declaration of restrictions that applies to the parcel as a whole. But whether that's one owner, two owners, a consortium of owners, that's not of relevance to the commission, other than that whoever it is responsible for adhering to the declaration.
Does that help, Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm struggling with is you're in a legal settlement here. I would think if the commission wanted to, it could add a stipulation that would prevent that. Because I think what Ms. DeLuca just explained is that through some clever maneuvering, while it would be one parcel of land, you could have two separate owners of the structures, whether it's through a ground lease. I have no idea how they do it, and maybe condominialize is the wrong verb, but it feels like it can be done. And now's the time to prevent it if you wanted to, I would think, right?
Katie?
I suppose, yes. I mean, this again could also be brought up. I mean, that's not what's proposed at the moment. As I said, this is what has been negotiated, and any change to that, should this move forward, would be done at a different stage.
Right. And I think, I mean, I bring it up for the Calhoun Drive Association, but it also sets a precedent for, eviscerating 1 acre zoning and other, areas within town where there's historic overlay.
Well, interestingly, we actually have it. We have a situation in another part of town that's got nothing to do with the historic overlay, where it's not that unusual to have two owners of one parcel of land. I will agree with you that it does create a lot of problems, hence the reason I know about several of them. And I certainly would not recommend it to any of my friends. But it's not, there's nothing that prohibits it.
I would say that there's a conflation of this concept of condominiumizing and sharing the responsibilities of ownership as in a partnership. So I think that without getting too deep into it, they're really not tantamonious to each other. A partnership between two different parties sharing the lot is simply not a condominiumization, nor is it, I don't even know how to contemplate that and why somebody would be interested in it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we just worry that this is all kind of, again, as I said, if it were a neighbor trying to do this to have, the grandmother live in the guest house or something, it'd be more amenable. But this just seems like it's a clear, de facto subdivision.
You got that. I can't make that discussion. This is that kind of, that would be really a bad illegal thing for us to do.
Okay.
It's not somebody's grandmother.
One last question. I apologize. Just on the plan itself, it looks like the first floor square footage has only come down from like 2182 to
they shrank the second floor.
2055.
Yeah, they shrank the second floor the most, because what we were trying to do is not have it protrude. Nick, if you have that in front of me, I'm doing it from memory, but we were trying to have it blend in and disappear, so that it wouldn't be visible. With the landscaping and the bringing down of the second floor, you should find it not to be noticeable. That's what we were trying to do, to make it look accessory, which is the goal of this regulation.
Right. So
the height came down about 3 feet. The height came down 3 feet or so. Is that?
I said
right?
3 feet based on, and Nick said it was
no,
more.
It was more. Think of it more of actually a whole story. It came down. The original building had 2 stories and roof. This is now just 1 story and roof. And the total square footage is about 2,181. And that's contained to the first floor. The second floor, according to our regulations, is less than 40% of the first floor, so it doesn't count. And the basement is well below the grade plane, so that doesn't count as well.
And did they pick up more? I know it may not count for the regulations, but it's going to count for us seeing it from the street. Didn't they pick up more square footage in the basement area?
No.
I think part of what you were. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. McRae.
It's the same. It's the same that we had seen back in June of 2020. except the roof lines are actually, significantly different now because we requested that they be pushed down and made less tall, if you would. They're shorter and flatter all the way around.
I mean, one of the things that we did discuss a lot in the beginning was the way that the floor area regulations read do allow for exemptions. Like, for example, the cathedral ceiling that one of the previous speakers mentioned only gets counted on one floor. It doesn't get counted on the second floor. So although the number may be low, so to speak, the massing and bulk is more. So one of the things that is written in the stipulation is that the plans show an interior layer which may be modified by a Calhoun as long as any modification does not change the exterior elevation, the mass, bulk, and height. So again, that speaks to the idea of protecting this structure and the look of this structure. Anything that does change one of those things, the elevation, the massing, and the height, etc., does have to come back. And that's true on the main structure also. But just like people make changes in the interior all the time by just going to the building department, doesn't necessarily mean it needs to come before the commission. As the chairman, I think, explained very well, it's the purview of the commission is not about what happens so much on the interior, to some degree, but more in this instance, particularly what happens on the exterior.
Okay, Mr.
Okay,
Matthews, we good.
thank you.
You, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Utschneider.
Hi, everyone. It's Lisa Utschneider from 29 Calhoun Drive. Thank you again for listening to our very strong feedback opposing this plan. The one thing I just wanted to follow up, because it is a bit confusing when the feedback we hear is that there was, quote unquote, a significant reduction from the 6,000 square foot down to the 2,000 square foot. And when you take a look at that first floor plan and the square footage, it was actually reduced less by, I think, about 6%. And when you look at that current plan, the reduction from 2,181 square feet to 2,055 square feet, less than a 6% reduction is, I would not call that significant. And then the other thing, we did take a look at the plan, and it did look like the height only came down by 3 feet, which again is not very significant. So again, just want to reiterate what the entire Calhoun Association has been sharing all night is we completely oppose this plan, the development of a plan. I personally think, given that we live right adjacent to the lot and we love looking at that historical home every single day, it will change the look and feel of the neighborhood. It will change how we use the neighborhood, how our children live in the neighborhood. I mean, even that hill where they plan to build, our kids sled down that hill, and the thought of some new development being built, it completely changes, again, the aesthetics of our neighborhood. And I just do not support it whatsoever.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We answered the questions about the total square footage, and yes, that the first floor was very close to the original, but that the overall, the second floor is much more reduced, and it will present less massing from the street, and it's going to be much more heavily landscaped. As I said, we did our best. So thank you. That is it for the speakers. And I go back to the commission. Do you want to entertain a motion on this settlement? Do you want to discuss it? How would you like to proceed?
I'm okay with a motion to be made.
And again, the seated members are Yeski, Levy, Lowe, Macri, and myself. Dennis?
I do want to say that I think that the I do hope that having this discussion is helpful to the neighbors. I feel a little conflicted that they don't feel like we've done a good job. So
I know,
that's
I feel,
unfortunate.
I know, I feel, I have, yes, I have the exact same reaction you do. I had a feeling when I heard from Ms. Troy sending an email last week, and I had a feeling that she had already seen the plans, and I'm disappointed because I thought we had done a pretty good job. Anybody else? Mr. Yeski?
I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Okey doke. And Nick already answered, and Peter Lowe. Do you want to discuss, or do you want to have a motion on the floor?
No, I share the frustration that we, I think, have not done a great job somehow in communicating with the neighbors. Not so much from the legal standpoint and the timing, which I think we addressed, but just in terms of what we were having to deal with regard to this lawsuit, and their perception, the neighborhood's perception of the changes that have taken place. And some of them, I think, are technical in nature, such as how do we measure FAR? And I think that kind of gets lost a little bit in the translation, which is unfortunate. That's all.
Well, yeah, and maybe at some point we can sit down with, when all this is over, maybe we can sit down with people and talk to them some more about their neighborhood. I'd like to throw in one thing, Katie, before you go in. I'd like to throw in one comment because the neighbors don't know this. Don't forget that we met with the Historic District Commission. The whole Planning and Zoning Commission met with the Historic District Commission, and we said, wow, we're kind of worried about this HO regulation that we approved 4 years ago, because we recently had a neighborhood that wasn't crazy about what happens when we approve something in it. And the Historic District Commission said, listen, we worked to develop those changes for almost 2 years. And without those changes, every single historic building in Greenwich was just coming down. And we went back and forth to try to find something that would work. And yeah, I hear you, but if you want to save anything historic, this is the best opportunity we've got. So Ms. Utschneider, I'm sorry, we're not taking any more public comment, but if, that's another possibility, is that the neighbors could look at our historic district, our HO regulation, and they could tell us if they, we could go back to the HDC at some point, the Historic District Commission, and talk to them. But we see a very strong trade-off, how to save a historic building. Okie doke, Mr. McRae, with that, I think we've spent almost an hour on this, just about an hour. So I think we're good to go. And I apologize that it was long, but I think it was important that we'd hear the neighbors and hear their responses. So Mr. McRae, if you would give us a motion.
Okay. 21 Calhoun Drive, proposed stipulation of settlement between the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Greenwich and 21 Calhoun Drive LLC, granting historic overlay site plan and special permit at 21 Calhoun Drive. Motion to approve the stipulation of settlement, noting the following. Project consists of a zone change application to change the zone of the property from RA1 to RA1 HO historic overlay. Site plan and special permit application to construct a single-family dwelling as substantially shown on Exhibit C. Civil engineering by SE Minor Company, dated July 13, 2021. Exhibit B, landscape by J. Fan Association Associates, revised dated November 16, 21. And Exhibit A, architecture by Cugno, architecture revised dated September 29th, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And just for the record, Mr. McRae, you're just pointing out background. This is a yes or no scenario.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye, yes.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
Mr. Lowe?
Nay.
Mr. McRae?
Aye.
And Albin is also aye. With that, the decision passes 4-1. Thank you to everyone from the neighborhood for speaking. We really appreciate it. And as we have said, we did our best for you. Okay, with that, we're going to move to the public hearing. And just since I see that a lot of people joined after we started, I'm just going to go over the the withdrawals and postponements. The second item in the regular meeting was withdrawn, and that was 17 Livingston Place, Duan Hua Tu and Felicia Zheng Zhang. We also have number 4 in the public hearing was postponed. That's 1143 East Putnam Avenue for an 830G application. Number 6, 2 Deerfield Drive, which has postponed as well. And then I believe number 11 is still on, correct? Mr. Leroux? I
He's
guess
nodding
so.
yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I
Yes,
thought my mic was
okay.
on.
So with that, do we have our court reporter with us? Will he kindly, hello, Mr. Court Reporter, how are you? I just
Fine,
wanted to,
thank you. Hi.
okay, good. Just want to make sure we can hear you so that you can holler at us when we forget things.
All right, I'm ready.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to remind everybody that I'm not on this.
Yes, just for clarity, seated on this application are Albin, Macri, Lowe, Barilak, and Yeski. And thank you, Mr. Levy, for reminding,
Yes.
but I hope we do hear from you. So, Mr. Cohen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvin. And good evening, members of the commission. Bruce Cohen representing the applicant in this application to present to the commission a zoning text amendment to create a new managed residential community overlay zone for assisted living services in the town of Greenwich. This application, you will remember, was originally filed together with an application to amend the zoning map to land this overlay zone at a property at the end of Old Track Road, and also to approve a site plan and special permit application. The applicant has chosen to move forward on the new text amendment on the theory that without that, there's really no point in preparing the documentation necessary for the final site plan. We have moved forward with this application with the cooperation of the commission and the members of the staff with whom we've worked to put the amendment in a form that the commission could be comfortable with and be satisfied that it in fact did address the objective of the POCD to create such a zone to encourage aging in place for residents of the town. We have in the past made a number of revisions to the commission's satisfaction, I believe, those suggested by the commission and helped with Ms. DeLuca, with whom we've been working. The most recent changes had to do with an attempt to introduce a lead standard as an element for the zoning incentives that this regulation would incorporate. Commission determined not to pursue that at this time, but rather address that on a broader regulatory basis at a future time. The most recent amendment to this regulation or revision of the regulation that the commission had suggested at its last hearing, which I think was on the early this month on the 9th, was to take a look at how we were addressing the yard setback issues in this regulation. And I think it was the commission that suggested that we look at it from the point of view of open space and retaining open space to the in the same, at least the same level that the underlining zone, in this case the GB zone, would mandate. And so we've prepared a revision which is now contained in the proposed regulation, which permits the commission to authorize modifications to minimum yard requirements, provided that there is no reduction in the open space. And because this is a kind of a new concept, we've included a proposed diagram, which we've labeled in order of the zoning regulation diagrams 9A, that illustrates how this would work. And in some circumstances, the commission may feel that it is more appropriate, particularly in an institutional or commercial setting, to favor one side in terms of open space as opposed to another, with minimums of 25 feet for any principal structure or 10 feet for any accessory structure. And then we have included schedule as a schedule to the regulations, another diagram 9A, which we think is helpful. At the briefing session yesterday, I think it was Mr. McRae who suggested that the commission might keep this approach in the back of its mind in terms of application to other areas or projects, developments in town. And I think it's a good idea. I think it works well in this case, and we appreciate the suggestion by the commission. Another comment that was raised at the briefing session yesterday came from Mr. Wells regarding the introduction of an energy efficiency standard as another way of looking at the incentives that this regulation would suggest. And there was some discussion about that. Let me just say that I think the project that we ultimately will present to the commission by way of site plan review would meet any energy efficiency standard that would be available. I think it was the kind of the sense of the discussion yesterday that like the lead proposal that we originally made, that the concept of introducing an energy efficiency standard, which would have to be based on some objective criteria, whether it's lead or something else, is something that the commission should look at on a broader basis. We would have no, problem.
May I just build on that, Mr. Cohen?
Yes, ma'am.
I see that Mr. Perkins is at the meeting, and I was wondering, the First Selectman's Energy Management Advisory Committee has a group of people working with P&Z to develop energy-related regulations. Since you are an application now pending before the commission, Mr. Wells and I would not be able to participate, but Mr. Perkins could meet with those individuals and discuss with them what the concepts are, what the thinking is, and it would be a great two-way opportunity for us. He has vast experience designing large-scale facilities, and he could give us input. He could give that committee input on the direction they're considering. And in addition, that committee, he will find them very knowledgeable, could make suggestions to him. There are several people that will, I think, impress him there. So if I might suggest that, and you may have somebody else that you would rather have attend. Mr. Wells and I would not be able to be there since you do have the pending site plan, but it would be a Monday morning at 10:30. I mean at 9:30. And it's a public notice meeting, and Katie can provide you more information, but if your client is willing, we'd love to have that discussion.
Ms. Alvin, I'm sure Brad would be glad to do anything the commission would like him to do. However, I would point out that Perkins Eastman is a very, very large architectural firm. They have people in that firm that do nothing but specialize in this area.
We are aware of that, as you know.
It may very well be more useful for everybody.
Perfect.
If he would designate someone like that.
That would be fine. And
he would be glad to.
We're very aware that Perkins Eastman has a lot of expertise in it. In fact, as you know, we have a member of ARC who's with Perkins Eastman, and we've been talking to him, and he is LEED certified. So we are aware of that, and that's absolutely fine with us. Anybody that he wants to send, it would be a pleasure to have the dialogue.
Right. Well,
But
I'm
again,
sure
he won't see our little faces, but the other folk are just really good.
And of course, we'd be glad to cooperate. But with that, Ms. Alvin, I think most of what I had to say about this regulation has been said at prior hearings. The bottom line is that with the expertise of people like Brad Perkins, who's designed many of these, with the expertise of a client who has built and managed very successfully a very similar facility in Westchester, which is kind of the forum on which we're building this. We've put together a regulation with the help, as I say, of staff, with a lot of research in other jurisdictions that we've been studying. And we believe it works not just for this site, but for other sites in the GB zone in town, which we at the commission suggestion have studies, and they work out in one way or another for various size projects. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And as you point out, Mr. Perkins is here as well.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have any comments on this? I have one comment, which is that I think the way the open space, and it's really good that you did the diagram and everything. I think the way the setbacks got figured out, so you got the same amount of green area, but optimizing its use was terrific. There were several other very thoughtful things that were put into this regulation as it evolved that I was very impressed with. And I'd like to thank you for the work. If nobody on the commission has any comment, does any member of the public?
I just thought I would if it's okay to talk about their project in particular.
Well, now you can't talk about the site plan because that's not what's before us, just the regulation change.
Okay, let's not talk
okay?
about it right now.
Okay, they'll be back.
I think actually what Mr. Cohen and his team has put together here actually is kind of an interesting thing, is that looking at what our maximum FAR is and not exceeding that, but actually looking to work with the town and actually giving back to the town. Usually we get buildings that, they want to build and build and build, but this one and how this text amendment is put together, we're getting underground parking, as things move along. The building could get bigger, but we'll have less parking, or we'll get the affordable housing, if the building gets bigger, those kind of things, where we get a kind of give and take here. And I think that's actually a critical thing for us to understand. Really, as I said, the same thing with the green area. Keep these ideas in the back of our mind, because I think actually, people would like to develop a property to their maximum potential, but at the same time, what does the town get other than just another big building? So this kind of creates a balance that both the applicant and the commission can work with and find something in the middle that works quite, to the benefit of both.
Yes. Okay. So with that, could we, does anybody from the public wish to speak? No. Okay. So I believe, wait, Peter Tessie, you raised your hand and then it went away again. Did you want to speak? Yes. Mr. Tessie, if you would go ahead.
Good evening. How are you? Hello?
Yep.
Good evening.
Okay, you're muted. Oh, I don't know what happened.
Okay, how's that?
Oh, there you go.
Good evening. I just want to reaffirm my strong support for the commission's advancing this proposal for this text amendment. As we know, it's something that you, through your good work and through the community at large, RTM called for as part of POCD. I think the applicant has been extremely diligent in adhering to many of the requests that have come forward on behalf of the commission to not only look at his proposal, but look at it in the broader context of the application of this amendment. And so I would just appeal to you to try and advance this in terms of the amount of time that it's taken to get to this point. I mean, it began, I believe, last spring. I understand there's other issues that are concurrent that do affect this particular text amendment, as we've heard about sustainability and so forth. But I think Mr. Cohen tonight reaffirmed that this particular applicant has sought the best and the brightest in the industry for assisted living. And they have applied those standards throughout their developments, and therefore, in a way, are paving the way for others who come behind. So I would just encourage you to look at the amount of time that this has taken, the fact that it's a response to a community need. And unlike some of the other things you deal with, it's being done in a compatible and constructive way versus other things that are under 830G and are more adversarial. I think this is a positive example of the applicant in the town working to meet a need. And I would just encourage you to work to move it along. And
Thank you very much, Mr. Tessie. Any other comments from the public? Does the commission have any objection to closing this item at this time? Please raise your virtual hand, your hand, or if you have any objections. No objections. Therefore, this item is now closed. Thank you very much. We move to the next one. I believe Mr. Barilek is recused on this item, and someone has to remember to find you when we're done. But we will. The next application is Riverside Yacht Club for a final coastal site plan and special permit at 102 Club Road. And the applicant is, it's you again, Mr. Cohen. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Alvin. Bruce Cohen, again representing the Riverside Yacht Club in connection with this application for final coastal site plan and special permit approval to permit the addition to the existing clubhouse of 2,900 square feet to allow the expansion and upgrading modernization of the existing kitchen facilities, which have not been updated for about 40 years. What I'd like to do is quickly, with the help of Pat and some images, remind you of the project. That's backwards, Pat. That's not the first image.
No, we'll get it.
There we go. Remind you about the project, and then after I do that fairly quickly, I'd like to address a couple of the issues that were raised in yesterday's briefing. Well, the project is to take place at the Riverside Yacht Club property, about 5.7 acres, which has existed there. Could you back up? Okay, stop right there. That's great. And that shows the property. The club has been there since 1888. The clubhouse has existed there since 1929. The area that we've ballooned in red is the area that where the kitchen is now located and where the expansion is proposed to take place. The next image, Pat, shows in plan form that in red shading the the proposed expanded area. And within the building, in red outline, the area of the existing facilities, kitchen, storage and that sort of thing that will be upgraded inside the building to join up to the new addition. The next image shows the front elevation on top of the building as it exists, with the portion to the left, the sort of the two roofs being the added area. And the next image is also the view of the club from the rear or south elevation, showing on the right the addition as it is proposed. And then the final image is the landscape plan that shows, kind of tough to read, but it does show the landscape installation that was designed by Bill Rutherford and reviewed and approved by the ARC. And with that, I'd like to quickly address the couple of issues that were raised at the briefing. The first one had to do with the concept that I think Ms. Albin talked about the issue of whether or not this was a substantial improvement as the section 6-139.1 defines it, and whether or not we could proceed just, I guess, on the basis of the variance that was obtained, or did we have to do more? We did obtain a variance from the Planning Zoning Board of Appeals of that provision that would have required in the AE12 zone the first floor elevation to be at an elevation of 13, and we're proposing it, and ZBA approved the elevation of 12.6. And let me go into the history of that a little bit, which I think will address the comments of the briefing yesterday. As I say, the building was built in 1929. In 1978, based upon the experience of the club, they did a major renovation of the club for the purpose of raising the club from its original elevation to the new elevation. The new elevation was its current elevation of 12.6. At that time, in 1978, there had been no flood maps yet enacted for this area. In other words, there was no AE12 zone that affected this property. So how did the club choose 12.6 feet as its height? They chose it based upon their experience of dealing with floods and storm events. And it just happened that they chose correctly, because since that time, the building has never been impacted by flooding, even during the most recent hurricane that we've had this season. This was not the first time that the ZBA was asked to and granted a variance of this height. They did it once before in 2011 for the same reason. And the reason was that a hardship existed by virtue of the existing pre-regulatory height of the first floor of the building. And so when the Board of Appeals granted that variance, that, as it did in 2011, permitted the club to join up, to marry up the new kitchen addition to its existing adjacent kitchen facilities, and thereby having a smooth transition between the two. There is no living space on the first floor of the building. The first floor of the building has never experienced a flood event. All of the flood design requirements have been adopted as a part of this new construction. I believe that at the pre-application, the commission requested the club to submit an evacuation plan, and we did that. The evacuation plan simply notes that there are apartments that are used seasonally by summer help at the club on the second floor, and there is a plan to move them should a flood event happen. There is nobody, no institution, no property owner that is more careful of and aware of the impacts of flooding as a yacht club, a boating club would be. They've got millions of dollars, not only of boats, but of docks, floats, boating facilities to protect.
So I think I'm trying to ask the question differently.
Yeah.
So, we originally required 1 foot of freeboard and in our CAM. FEMA does not require any freeboard whatsoever, but their language on their website is, although they don't require it, communities are encouraged to adopt at least 1 foot of freeboard. So the question would be that we were trying to get to is, if you were to come in again, and maybe you could just have the club send us this, I don't mean to make a lot of work, but we're looking for, can we get people to begin migrating to that foot? Now, I know you did no freeboard because at the time those were the regs, and those are the base case FEMA requirements. But it's not going to be long before FEMA starts requiring freeboard. They're already encouraging it in the NFIP. So it's just the question that Katie was raising at the meeting was, after this improvement, when would you get, you're going to be at 50%. Are you going to keep getting variances? Because there really is no hardship.
There really is a hardship. Otherwise, the planning, the Board of Appeals wouldn't have read it. The hardship was the existing.
The existing, but if you keep doing it.
Let me finish. Hear me out. In the existing pre-regulatory location of the first floor. That was the hardship. It's a highly legitimate hardship that's recognized in case law. Existing pre-regulatory building location, absolutely is. But in response to your question, are we going to continue? Let me just tell you.
Thank you.
In the variance that was granted in 2011 was for a 1,782 square foot addition. This variance was granted for 2,888 square feet. The building altogether is over 15,000 square feet. So in terms of valuation on which 50% is based, it's possible. But I doubt very much that if they were to reconstruct the building or the building that constituted more than 50%, they'd have to give it some thought. When the building was raised in 1978, it was not, there was, the words you used is freeboard. There was no legal requirement for a freeboard, but notwithstanding that, there was a freeboard that the building was elevated to, which was 0.6 above the 12-foot of base flood elevation, which turns out, fortunately, to be adequate for this site.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna accept you.
If the commission did want to add to their existing building, we'd have to analyze and see whether or not we didn't go over, whether or not additional freeboard was necessary or where we were. But right now, this application, I think, not only has gotten ZBA approval, we've been through ARC and they've approved, wetlands approved, and I just noticed this morning an email from John Goucher approving on behalf of.
Okay, now we got one other thing, which is there's an email from Alexandra Mock on the 16th of November.
Yeah. Let me talk
And
about that.
thank
May
you. Yes, of course.
She raises 2 points. She asks that well, the club provide for organic lawn care products such as pesticides and synthetic nutrients. The club has always been mindful of their obligation as a shorefront property owner, and has used in the past and continues to use and will continue to use
So we
all
could just make it a condition.
organics. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
She points to the request for some flowering species. Bill Rutherford did note to me when we reviewed this that he did provide for flowering species called high tide bushes, which still exist and will be planted on the eastern side of the property. Her final recommendation was to create a 10-foot wide no-mow zone for the purpose of filtering lawn care products because there was no filtration. There is no filtration that's now required, and it would be a hardship for the club to have to create a new landscape in that distant peninsula. So I believe we've adequately addressed Alexandra's comments. And I did point out in my discussion that ARC has reviewed and approved this plan.
And the sewer issue got resolved. I think you supplied the notification.
We sent Mr. Feminel a letter notifying him that his comments were all acceptable.
Okay, he just wants you to hear him. All righty. Does anybody on the commission have any questions? No. Do I have any comments from anyone in the public? No. Does anyone object to this application being closed now? Please raise your hand. I see no hands raised. Therefore, this application is now closed. Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen. You don't have the next one. I know that. I know who has the next one.
Thank you, Ms. Alba. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. The next application is JS Land 2 LLC and Greenwich Runaway LLC at 33 and 35 John Street. That would be Mr. Tessie. And okay. Hello, Mr. Tessie.
Good evening.
Okay. So.
Listening to your staff briefing yesterday, this is a continuation of your hearing of our application at your November 9th regular meeting. And we left off at that meeting where you would consult with counsel and internally on the issue by Maria. I think you did a very good job on the staff report regarding the easement
Marisa,
area.
you mean Marisa?
Running along the western boundary of the property, serving as an easement access for the property at 39 John Street. So that issue appears to be put to bed, at least at the staff level, I would say. On the comments on the second page of the staff report, there's a reference made to the 30-foot in length, 200-foot strip running north and south along the 35 John Street property line.
Yeah.
And that strip is actually remains part of 35 John Street. It's not being conveyed to the property, to the owner of the property at 33. The reason why that strip is there is that the owner of 39 in the back in another entity, but the underlying owner of 39 is also the owner of 35. And he wanted to have access to his, joining the two properties just for his access. Because as you know, 35 is unimproved. And he utilizes that field in front. So that's the reason why you see that funky 30-foot strip, but it's not part of the lot that is proposed to be, I'll call merged into 33 John Street parcel. Is that clear? Did I clear
Not
enough of that?
completely.
Yeah, Mr. Tessie, so that piece, that strip of land between 2R and the rear lot of, I guess it's number 36, is that enumerated anywhere, or is it enumerated as part of this application as well?
No, it's not part of this application. I'm
Okay.
not sure what you're talking about. It's
I know what I didn't know
that
is that,
strip that you see hatched in
yes,
is not part of this application. It's
Okay.
remaining in the ownership of the 35 John Street.
okay, great. Is there some document that actually identifies what that piece of property is?
It's just part of the lot. It's just not being conveyed, just like the bulk of the lot.
Okay, and it's part of the 2R lot, correct, or the part of the rear lot?
No, it's not part of the rear lot. It's
Okay, it's part of 2R.
part of the
then.
front
Okay,
lot. It's part of the front lot at 35. Remember, 35 was a rectangular piece of property.
Yep.
What's being carved out of 35 is the parcel DD of 2 acres.
Mhm.
That 2 acres does not include that hatched strip of land. The owner.
Oh, I get it now. Okay, so it's that little strip it's still part of the 2R 35
Correct,
lot.
right.
It's
Yeah.
left over. Okay.
Yeah, it's left over.
After we remove the 2 acres. I get it now.
I was
Thank
just
you.
trying to tell you why it is that strip is there, and that's because the underlying owner of the rear parcel, that's the beneficiary of the easement, is the same owner of lot 2R. So he wants to be able to go through to his other property,
Through to his other.
relevant to this application, but I'm just trying to tell you why.
So you're saying he's going to cross DD? That he wants.
No, he's not
cro-
going to cross TD. I apologize. I don't seem to be able to, it's been that way all day, maybe all my life.
Probably all your life. We'll
It's
give you
very
that one.
simple. The parcel DD is being conveyed, if you approve this application, to the owner of 33. That there. That's it. I'm giving you too much information explaining why it was that the owner of 2R is keeping that strip along its western boundary and not conveying a full strip right to its boundary on that side. And that's all I was trying to do. But it's being left off and it's remaining part of 2R. That's all.
But okay, I'm sorry. It's maybe I'm just being dense, but so there it is, the little hatched area. And how's he going to get to it again?
It's part of that. It's part of 2R.
It's part of 2R.
Yes.
So it doesn't belong to the, it belongs to the undeveloped lot.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
all.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm good.
That will be, because of our zoning regulations, not counted in the lot area, zoning lot area for 2R, because it doesn't meet our requirement of having twice the minimum side yard, for the zone to count an area. And I think that's why Tony hatched it out, because that wouldn't count as part of the
gotcha.
zoning lot
I'm
area.
totally with you.
Lot
Okay.
2R.
It's
Okay.
not part of the zoning lot area. I got it.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand why he's doing it, but that's his right. Okay.
Yeah,
does
that's
any-
okay. Right.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you, Pat, for putting it up. Does anybody in the commission have any questions or comments?
Yes, just two quick things for Mr. Tessie. Does any language or text of the easement that allows access to the rear lot need to be updated to reflect any changes that are on this map?
No, not at all. We send you the language. The easement is a fixed location as shown on the map. So
Okay.
irrespective of underlying ownership, you can carve that property up 15 times, but that easement will overlay always the ownership and be at that fixed location.
Right, because I saw it was.
And it's over,
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
and it's over the same named parcels, so to speak, right? I mean, so what it was called previously or existing is the same thing it will be called in the future, right?
It'll always be shown on the title of the property as an encumbrance for an easement right through that location. Yes.
Okay.
Like with
Now,
meets and bounds and whatnot, or calling.
Sorry? It's a private agreement. You know, easements are private agreements. Once you've taken it out of the issue of being a road, it becomes irrelevant for zoning and for planning. It's a private agreement allowing somebody to go back and forth over a piece of land. It's no different than a utility company easement, no different than a conservation easement. It's fixed, it shows a location, and it stays at that location through ownership of the property that has the benefit to use it, in a ownership of the property that's burdened with the obligation of allowing the easement.
Right, but you're asking the commission to, change lines and rename lots and all that other stuff. So they're just asking a simple question: is there any confusion going to result as a result of that? And in the
Yeah,
language,
I said the
of
answer
that
is no,
easement?
because this is fixed in the land records of the town of Greenwich, not the zoning records of the town of Greenwich. So it's always going to overlay this property at that location. So I'm trying to say, I'm
Right.
trying to say, answer the question probably. Again, I'm using
the-
two words, but the
there-
answer is no. There's no
Right.
need to update the easement because the easement is fixed forever until it's released from the land records at that
Okay.
location.
Second question was on the zone, on the map that's going to be recorded. Is that easement on that map as well? I didn't see it anywhere, but I may have the wrong
The
map.
easement is called out by Mr. DeAndrea on the map. This is the map that's going to be recorded, subject to additional notes. I see that on number 8, which is your standard note in the issues and comments. With that addition of that note, subject to, this is the map. It'll.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anybody
you.
else have any questions? Do I have any comments from the public on this application? Again, this is 33 and 35 John Street. No comments from the public. If anybody on the commission objects to closing this application at this time, please raise your hand or advise me. No objection to closing this application. This application is therefore
Well, thank you,
closed.
and I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. And I plan on eating a little bit and hope you all enjoy yours.
You too, Mr.
Thanks,
Tessie.
John.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. I guess that's his only application. All right. Our next application is Greenwich Medical Spa. And the first part of it is a zoning text amendment to define a medical spa and include the use as a personal service. Representing the applicant. Wait, it's a different Hegney.
Correct.
I'm just pinch hitting this evening, Madam Chair.
So it's Big Hegney. All right, sir, if you would go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members.
Did you think we weren't going to notice, Mr. Hegney?
30 years will make a difference, and usually people notice that.
All right, sir, if you would go ahead.
Thanks. Good evening, Tom Hegney for the applicant. I listened to the briefing discussion yesterday on the proposed amendment. This is to define medical spa, which doesn't quite fit into personal service and doesn't quite fit into medical. It's somewhere in between. And so we have a new definition of it. The modifications that were suggested through the staff and the commission members are acceptable to my client. I think they make a lot of sense. Adding cosmetic care, adding licensed medical professional, adding or changing from consumer to patient, because that is how my client refers to patrons, and taking out medical muscle building treatment. So I asked my client, well, what is that? Is that a barbell? Because I know the question was, well, are we building a gym here? And she said, no, it's a radio frequency and high intensity electromagnetic energy.
What did I tell you? McRae would not believe me when I told him that. He's like, no, it can't be that.
Mr. Hegney, for brevity's sake, I'm not too sure how that would be
Don't even go there, okay?
I am not suggesting that we include this in the definition.
Okay.
So I think just taking out the language that was removed, I think is fine.
Okay, because I think actually, as it's stated here, it includes but not limited to, I think maybe cover whatever you just said that was. Went over my head completely.
I think it can also fit under body contour treatment.
Okay.
No, don't go there because that's liposuction and I don't want to even.
All right.
That's a medical use, okay? That is totally a medical use. Okay, so you're good with the clarifications.
Revised language and including it in use group 4, as was part of the discussion yesterday, I think is very appropriate. It does fit within that group, and that would allow it to be in the LB and GB zones, but not the LBR and CGBR.
And these would be for staff this week. These would be considered minor changes, so it doesn't have to go be re-advertised or anything like that.
I don't believe so. I think this is more, as the phrase was used yesterday, wordsmithing.
Okay.
I'd also point out that the legal ad description is much broader than the definition or description in the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And
So
you're not adding additional uses. You were just really clarifying the language.
Yep. Okay. Well, we're going to see how this one goes. Okay. Any more comments from the commission?
Well, just maybe I don't really want to get into this, but I'll ask the question anyway. When you use the word treatment, is that somehow modifying the idea of going to being in a gym and doing bodybuilding? Is that the intent?
Well, these are treatments, be they cosmetic or more medical. Something that someone is doing to you than you are doing yourself, which I would see in a gym. You're working out. Here you're receiving a treatment to improve your appearance and your health.
Mrs. Puya would like to speak. Would you like her to maybe opine?
Yeah, she's going to know more about this stuff than you are, Mr. Hegney.
That's
I mean,
true.
no offense.
No offense taken, Madam Chair.
I kept thinking she was a member of the public, but no. So, Madam Puya. Yes, no, I for some reason wasn't registering that. Hello. Okay, so you're hearing how we're just trying to get our brains around defining this use.
It's a laser. So it's sorry if you were talking about that radio frequency. It's a laser treatment. It's nothing, it's not actually doing manual working out. It's not a gym at all. So it has nothing to do with that. It's not building that.
Yeah, and I think what we did with it is good because I don't think we should leave the door open to laser treatments generally, because there are surgeries that are, and so you would, okay. So that answered the question. Does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Puya? No. Folks, do you have any other questions yourselves? No. Does anyone from the public wish to speak about this application? It does not appear so. So would anybody have any objection to closing this application at this time? Please raise your hand or speak up. Seeing no objection, we will close this application. Congratulations, Mr. Hegney. You just needed the big guns, Ms. Puya.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So we will go on to the next application, which is also Greenwich Medical Spa for 1233 to 1285 East Putnam Avenue. This part is for the final site plan and special permit. And this is to convert the ground level parking spaces to this medical spa as it is now defined. Mr. Hegney, if you would please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. As you stated, this is an application to convert the lower level of this building from parking to part of the medical spa. It would add approximately 2,000 square feet. We have more than ample parking based on the parking study. So losing the 8 parking spaces has no impact on the parking availability on the site. Obviously, the building has been substantially damaged and is under reconstruction. The first floor or upper level would be renovated and reconstructed in accordance with the plans that we forwarded to you last month. And then the lower level, again, would be converted to partially a storage area and partially active space as part of the medical spa.
Mr. Hegney, just so the plans in this set, is that the final version here?
Let's see, the floor plans are the ones that are dated October 5th. No, this is an earlier version, Pat. What I forwarded to you this afternoon was the set that we had sent you back in October.
Okay.
And that's, it shows a slightly different configuration than what was there.
But it's the October 5th plan. I know we have
The October 5th plan. That question did come up at the briefing yesterday. That's why I forwarded those to you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Any questions, people?
So Mr. Hegney, so I'm looking at the October 5th plan. And I was going through some of the notes. ARC, I don't know if they talked about the storefront or what's happening at the lower level in terms of that storefront, because I have the plan that was here, but the elevations are from a different design firm and have a storefront there. So I'm really kind of befuddled as to how things kind of dovetail together here and what we should actually have here as a plan for the record.
Yes, the plans, the elevations that were approved by ARC at their September 22nd meeting do coincide with the floor plans and doors and windows that are shown on the October 5th floor plans. You're correct, there are 2 different design firms, one for the exterior, one for the interior, but those have been coordinated between those October 5th floor plans and the elevations that the ARC reviewed and approved on September 22nd.
Okay, and then no, that's the wrong set. Hold on a second. Okay, so first floor has 6 treatment rooms?
Yes.
Okay, and the basement floor has another 3?
Correct.
Okay, for a total of 9, and that's copacetic, correct, Mr. LaRoe, for a total of 9 based on our zoning?
Say that again, Mr. Macri.
All right, the zoning approval is for 9. That's based on the zoning information that was provided.
Oh, correct, right,
Yeah.
from the prior decision, right, that was the number then. So if it's changing, we just have to make sure we have adequate parking, which the site is well parked.
Okay. A quick question for Mr. LaRoe. I know anybody else can kind of chime in on this. If for some reason, actually, the use that's proposed here actually moves on or is discontinued, is the lower space and the upper space technically tied together now? Or could the stairway, the communicating stairway, be removed and now we have two separate spaces?
I mean, I think we could, it could be possible, but again, it doesn't really change, besides the vertical circulation, it doesn't really change anything from the building standpoint because the second floor is the second floor, which is the one that faces the current Riverside Commons.
Right, because I remember years ago discussing actually the garage, and I think there was a thought about using the garage for something, and it was like, no, it's supposed to have been an open garage.
Well, if you're remembering any issues with it, it was that the garage needed to be ventilated properly, and that was, I think, the issue with why it wasn't open for a while. And then now that now we've had the fire and the catastrophic event, so that's why it continues to be closed. But that was my understanding with the original one, is that there was certain air circulating issues that the building official was not satisfied with, that delayed the opening of that part of the building for a while.
Okay. Okay, I
We
think
don't
I
have anything further, Madam Chair.
Anything
no,
else?
I think I'm good.
Okay. So does anybody else in the commission have any comments? Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this application? No members of the public. Does anybody in the commission object to us closing this application at this time? Dennis, you better not be raising your hand. No, just kidding. Does anybody object to closing? Please advise. Seeing no objection, this application is now closed, and the commission is going to take how long a break are we taking, Katie? 15? What did you say?
That was 15, not 25. Sorry, there's too many heads.
Are we almost done?
Well, yes, but there's mandatory break.
It's an early break too.
Don't
No
say
whining. When you get a break, you just take it. You
take
don't
the break.
whine about it. You guys,
we have
what's wrong with you?
We never say anything like early or short. We don't do anything as a bad
Okay,
I'm
you've
shocked.
now burned a minute of your break. We'll see you at
Right.
7:16.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
14
Thanksgiving,
minutes.
everyone.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So Katie, there's this thing that I sent you from Westcog about community septics. And they allow them now in the floodplains, but some communities but we can be more restrictive. I'm going to send you the next email on that too, so the commission can discuss it. And I was going to say something else and I can't remember what it was, except I have to make more pies. All righty. Do we have a quorum here? It's just Nick, Bob, Katie, and me.
The veiled quorum.
But I'm about to send you that email, but I think, I guess it's Pat Sesto who would tell us about things in floodplains.
Well, we could certainly discuss it with her and with the state.
I don't think we have to discuss it with the state. A municipality apparently can take, I'll send it to you, can take a more restrictive view.
No, I don't mean it from that standpoint. I just mean it from, any suggest, I'm thinking John Goucher.
Yeah.
This is just as an, advisory.
But this is came from deep.
No, that's what I'm saying, just to get some background on it.
Okay. And maybe talk more to Westcog. But Stanford's taken a regulatory approach that's more strict, so we might want to talk to Stanford. Just don't tell anybody we're talking to Stanford. All right, folks, we have a quorum. Our next item is the Planning and Zoning Department application for a zoning text amendment to section 6.5 and 6.5A and 6.154 of the building zone regulations. And this is to define and regulate short-term rentals. Madam DeLuca, if you would proceed.
Thank you. Yes, as you noted, this is to regulate something which by virtue of the omission in the zoning regulations at the moment is a permitted use. But adding it in as a defined use, I think is just helpful for the community, because not only does it describe what it is, but it describes what it is not. I won't bother reading it since it is in the agenda. But I think one of the key things of this is also adding short-term rentals to 6-154, which is section dealing with parking and garages for residential purposes. As we discussed yesterday at the briefing, I think it would be prudent if the commission held this open. One of the things that came up as part of the discussion was Mr. McRae's comment that when we say temporary rental of part or all of a residential property, provided that it has a certificate of occupancy for a dwelling unit, we should be a little bit more clear about what we mean, because just because one has a CO for a dwelling unit doesn't mean that the area that is being rented is necessarily safe for human occupation. As an example, if one were to rent out a basement that didn't have proper ingress and egress, we want to make sure that we're covered from a liability standpoint if we don't clarify that in the regulation. So I'm going to reach out to the town risk manager and also to the building official. And I think it would be prudent actually to reach out to Westcog, even though their comment thus far has been that this is not an intermunicipal issue and that we can proceed as we see fit. But I am curious to know how this is handled in other communities, or if they've even thought about this issue, because I do think it is an important one. So I think at this point, post a discussion, it would be a good idea to just leave it open and have it at a subsequent meeting once we can either add some language or clarify or whatever is needed based on the comments that we receive.
Comments from the commission? Go ahead.
I'm okay with that. That sounds like a great idea. I just want to make sure, yes, we're going to do this just to make sure that actually we understand that any space, as Mrs. DeLuca just said, is actually proper and habitable. I mean, we've had experience in this before, and we don't want to make sure we're not going to go get something unusable or unsafe better.
Anybody else on the commission wish to comment?
I think that's a good clarification, and I don't think there'll be any issues if we add that.
We're gonna turn to public comment in a sec, but several of us had the opportunity to attend a land use legal seminar this week. And an item of note was case Wibby versus Pine Orchard Association, Zoning Board of Appeals. And it was this year, the decision. And the decision was that since the regulations had been silent on STRs, on short-term rentals, they de facto were allowing them. This is a Superior Court decision, so it could still be appealed or go to the Supreme Court. Yes, or it could still be appealed and go to the Supreme. I was just confirming that it is Superior. It can still be appealed and still go to the Supreme Court. So it could go through the appellate court still, appellate. But the important thing for us is that what this says is if your regulations have been silent, you can't all of a sudden forbid them. Interestingly, we do know that some communities in Connecticut did decide to just go ahead and forbid them. As we researched what communities in the state were doing, we found 3 situations. One out and out forbidding them. Another one was completely wide open, do whatever you want. And the third one in particularly Hartford, but when we met with one of the coastal communities, they were considering this as well. Very strict regulations and requirements for licensing. That community has a very active summer tourism, and so it may make sense to them because it's part of their reputation that their facilities be licensed because it's their name. Everybody goes there in the summer. They feel like it's part of their hotel system, if you will. So those are the 3 instances, and I would say that we're opting for the most flexible, the least amount of regulation. Is that a fair way to say it, Katie?
Yeah, I would just clarify. I think we could. I don't think that case says we could forbid them. Just, I know that's not particularly relevant since that's not what we're proposing. However, the distinction is that ones that were already in play would be allowed to continue, just like any regulation change where there's a particular use, let's say for sake of argument, in play that you may prohibit. The existing uses are permitted under the grandfathering laws.
Yes, exactly. I should have been more clear because it becomes an existing nonconformity.
Right. And we did discuss that in one of our workshops when we had a public workshop on this issue of short-term rentals. And first of all, I don't think there's a desire to do that in the community. And second of all, the prospect of trying to identify the existing short-term rentals does not seem like an effective use of our time.
No. Okay, so if you guys don't have any more questions, I know we have somebody in the public with her hand up, and I am going to promote her to panelist so she may speak. And here she comes. And our first speaker is Wynn McDaniel. I'm going to say you're chair of RTM District 7.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
You haven't been overthrown or anything.
No, not yet. We'll wait till December. But thank you, Margarita. And I did just want to speak for a moment because I know, Margarita, you and Katie both know that this is something that is very important to our district. And I appreciate you and the commission for adding this to the agenda tonight. As you know, it's been something that, affects, that we've been talking about for a long time, that affects my district and the town of Greenwich. And for background, I did want to mention that I am speaking as the chair of the district. I did contact our RTM moderator last December as some of our residents had brought this up as an issue, just to find out what information existed. And they went to our town attorney, who did provide some input back on December 31st of 2020. And we also had a meeting of all of the RTM chairs earlier this year. And I brought this up, that this was something that I was working on with you all. So it is getting a lot of attention across, the RTM district chairs. The one thing, that I've mentioned all along is I think we do need some form of a guideline. And I would like to have something that is, more in line with what some of the other communities have done, where they've actually, required the short-term rentals to be registered with the town. They even pay a fee in some of these communities, and then there are penalties if they don't abide by this. But I think for what we want to do, if we want to start up simple, I do understand what's been outlined in the agenda. And I find that to be at least a start. And hopefully, if we can get this clarification on the CO, as was mentioned earlier, that this is something that the commission will approve. And then maybe we can, see how it works within our community. And if there is a way that we need to kind of tighten the guidelines down the road, that's something that we can possibly look at. So, I understand you're going to keep it open. Since we've been working on this for over a year, and I know a lot of these things do take time, I do hope that the commission will get this clarification that they've requested and get this back on the agenda so that, we can, vote on it or close on it or accept this particular modification that's been proposed. So with that, I would just like to thank you, and I'm not shy in contacting you all, so I will be watching this closely. All right, so thank you.
Thank you. Mary Jenkins, hold on just a second. And oops, I meant to promote you completely. Hold on. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and, sorry.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you and the other commissioners a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to keep this really short. I'm used to having a 3-minute clock, so I'm just going to focus on
that's good.
seconding what my representative Chair Wynn said, that and I, as the commission knows, I've had personal experience with short-term rental abuses, if you will, in my own neighborhood. And one of the concerns that I have, and I don't know whether it's appropriate for the commission to address it or for RTM to address it, is that one of the abuses that I've read about in other communities is that there can be a very concentrated form of STR operation that begins to look like a business and begins to feel like a business in terms of competing with bed and breakfasts and other lodging facilities in the town that have a settled and residential feeling. And I think, as Wynn said, the draft that we have in front of us is helpful, and it addresses some of the major issues that can be addressed. But at some point, there's a gray area where you have more than one short-term rental in a neighborhood, or more than one multi-unit facility where there are many short-term rentals coming and going. And my concern is that I don't want to see you have to register or to have to increase the bureaucracy for this. But I think at some point there needs to be some investigation of a quasi-commercial use of short-term rentals. And when it hits a small neighborhood, as it did in the case of, in my own case, it has a very dramatic effect. And it is not a lodging, it's a lodging function that doesn't look or act like a lodging function in the smaller neighborhoods. So again, my concern is the quasi-business aspect of this that affects the residents when it's nearby. I also just had a question. One of the things I've seen in other communities is people in tax advantaged housing, and I have no idea if this would affect affordable housing, but I assume that if someone is occupying affordable housing, they cannot then turn it into a short-term rental opportunity, because I know that in other states, there's been a concern that it turns into a profit-making opportunity for people.
They're not supposed to.
Not supposed to. And thank you, Madam Chair. That leads me to my final comment. I'm way over my 3 minutes here. My final comment really is—
we won't hold it against you.
Thank you. I like to say that enforcement of short-term rental is kind of like dog licensing. You only see the ones that don't work, where
Yes.
things go bad. And I understand that you're going to have to rely, at least initially, on
Always.
neighbor reports and police reports.
Always.
To enforce it.
You know,
we
always talk about this, and I'm just going to reinforce it to you. Katie, we have 2.5 people going out and doing zoning enforcement inspections in a town with 24,000 dwelling units and 63,000 inhabitants. That's 2.5 people. So yes, they work their tails off. They do a great job. But what super helps is that when there's an issue, regardless of what it is, we hear from our fellow residents. Katie, 2.5 people?
Yeah, and I would just like to put in a very shameless plug to all the RTM members listening. If you like to support our budget proposal, I did put in for 1.5 positions, 1 full-time, 1 half-time position in the zoning enforcement arm of the department for these very reasons, this and many more reasons. But I think it's severely understaffed, frankly, based on the level of service that people would like to see from that department, and they have to triage constantly. And I won't get into it now, but stay tuned because I'll have a full report.
But that's you're absolutely right. Even if we go to 4 people full time, you still have 63,000 residents and 24,000 dwelling units. And there's signs and there's lights. And we are still going to rely, where there's a big issue, on residents letting us know where it is, because even 4 people aren't going to find it. And you really don't want an army out there enforcing. We've got other things to spend money on, and residents can chime in. So you're absolutely right, Ms. Jenkins. That one big issue that came up, we heard from the neighbors, and it got addressed that way. Chief Heavey heard from the neighbors, we heard from the neighbors, and that's how it gets addressed. But that's what's going to keep happening. And that's the great strength of Greenwich in many ways, is we've got so many engaged residents who are really committed to helping keep the town on the straight and narrow.
And I want to thank the commission now again for the way that our situation was handled here. If that's the way it's handled in the future, it'll be very effective. And I do appreciate that.
Fingers crossed. Thank you for that very much. Because as we said to someone else earlier tonight, we're here to serve you. While following the regulations, as Katie keeps reminding me. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public wish to speak?
I think Mr. Wells has a comment.
Yeah.
Mr. Wells, okay, you're not in the public.
No, so I won't speak until you let me.
All right, go ahead. What's up?
Thank you. Just want to build on what Ms. Jenkins said. I've seen some communities where maybe the problem is you don't want this to morph into business. So somebody, renting out for week for years or so. I know it's an enforcement issue, but maybe just get something out. We think about something you can only rent for X number of times. Maybe it's 4 times. I've seen some communities where it's only once, once per year, twice per year, 4 times per year, but something that prevents the continuous rental for a 1 or 2 week period.
Yeah, the thing's gonna be, how are you gonna enforce that?
Well, the neighbors are going to call.
But they won't even know. So, they see Joe go in and you see what I mean? They don't even know when there's turnover necessarily.
Well, all they have to do is take out their iPhone and take a picture of the car that's in that parking lot and send it in. I mean, I'm just saying, even if they don't, if there's something on the books and people, are aware of it, maybe they'll back off.
Well, it's something to think about. Limiting the number of times a year that somebody could rent a property. Thoughts, anybody else? Here comes Nick.
Mrs. DeLuca put in fewer residential property for fewer than 30 consecutive nights at a time. I think if we're looking at that consecutive nights, is there a gap in between those 30 nights? Is it 30 nights, or is it a cumulative time across a year? That kind of thing. It's
but that's
I think
a
kind of looking at
different
that
thing.
way.
She's trying to limit it. She's trying to make sure it doesn't turn into a boarding situation.
Right. And what I'm saying, actually talking from what Mr. Wells is talking about is that, is there some way to actually amend the language to say that it's a specific amount of days per year, or no more than days per year, that kind of thing. So understanding that actually, yes, now it's a long-term rental or short-term rental that now has become a long-term rental.
I mean, I think the only way to do that would be through a registration system. And we're back to kind of, are we at that stage where it warrants this kind of attention?
I don't think we're
a bridge too far at the moment.
I agree with Mr. Levy. I feel like let's take a step, see how we do, because we have the question of enforcement and where do you want to dedicate your people? What we do very much want to address, and Katie mentioned it at the beginning, is we don't want any situations that are dangerous to the folks that are renting them. Right. And that if there's ever an issue, we can step in and correct it somehow, because we're all cognizant of what happened in those basement apartments in New York City. And we were fortunate in Greenwich that nothing like that happened here. But Katie and I had the conversation with Chief Heavey. And he said, we got a lot of calls and everybody was safe, but it's a concern. So that's the thing we want to be careful about, is first and foremost, life safety issues. The second thing is who abuses the system and who respects it. And where does it become egregious an egregious use in the neighborhood?
I think Mrs. Jenkins brought up a good point, but I think it's my understanding that maybe in our language it's already covered about an affordable unit that actually becomes an STR. But I believe our 6110 and I think the state's 830G declarations actually prohibited from being sublet.
No, the 830G, that to my memory doesn't speak to it. But if you had an affordable unit that was being used by somebody paying non-affordable rent, you would be in big trouble if somebody nailed you. And Bob's nodding because he's probably read 830G about the same number of times, if not more than he's been reading it regularly.
But,
so
Mr. Relic, is there something in the language?
Yeah, it's in the declaration itself, because
in the rents.
Right. Everybody who comes in and does an 830G, they're not done when we give them an approval and they build.
Right.
They enter into an agreement that that staff administers that prohibits them from doing this sort of thing. It prescribes the kind of rentals that must exist. Very common to all affordable properties is that it must not be transitory. It must not be, not thinking of the right word, but it can't be a hotel use sort of thing.
so implicit is that it not be a short-term use.
How does that,
Explicit is the rent.
right? Is it covered, that's covered by the property owner? What about the tenant itself? Could the tenant do it?
Yes, of course, everybody in the world can cheat. That's what we're trying to say to you, is somebody could cheat, but you're not supposed to. You're prohibited from charging a non-affordable rent, and you're not by state statute prohibited from a short-term rental, not directly prohibited that I remember seeing.
I've never seen a multifamily rental landlord's lease that didn't prohibit
Sublets
subleasing
without permission.
And I'm sure there are some, but
oh yeah, I mean, and people are going to cheat.
Inconceivable to me that a landlord in an affordable property is going to let his arbitrage his space without shooting the tenant.
Now does somebody say, well, my granddaughter's staying there? Yeah, people cheat, Nick. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Okie doke. Anybody else? All right, so we're going to leave this open and keep working on it. Katie, that's the plan.
Yep.
And you've already heard from Westcog. And, the other towns are doing their thing and we're doing ours. And in that case, we are leaving this application open. And with that, we go to our last item of the night, which is the proposed language for the declaration of trust for the town's affordable housing trust fund.
We're skipping over the sign thing?
Oh, shoot. It's my bad. I crossed it out during the briefing yesterday because I was like, okay, so we're not going to do this. I'm so sorry. All right, so let's go to the sign one. Planning and zoning, and this is for the text amendment to allow logos to
Madam
be.
Chair, I thought we agreed that we were going to postpone this one because we were going to get more
That's what
information.
I agree. I thought we agreed to that too, and that's why I crossed it out. And then you said, right after I said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did say that. Yeah. Well, we said, let's see if there's any public comment. Right. That's
so
what we
do
said.
we have any public comment on the illuminated logos? That's all we want to know from you. Does anybody in the public wish to speak about illuminating logos? You have your chance now. I know. Yes. Okay. Nobody wants to speak about the logos. We will therefore leave this open. And if anybody cares in the public, we are going to keep working on this and we'll come back with it. Okay. Now we go to the trust. And with that, the ordinance creating the Affordable Trust Fund was approved by the RTM on September 27th of this year. That ordinance requires the submittal to the RTM within 90 days of its approval of the trust fund of a declaration of trust. The declaration of trust is basically the operational detail underlying the ordinance that goes with the ordinance. And that is what is before you now. If you were to move this to the Board of Selectmen, it would go to them. I forget which agenda, their first meeting in December, and then it would be submitted to the RTM on the 23rd of December, thus gliding in just short of our deadline of the 27th. And we would go to the RTM's meeting in January. Basically, the language is the same as what's in the ordinance. It provides some operational detail, as we said. One of the things that we have added is that the trust has an advisory council. Since you last saw this, the advisory council, now the members that are appointed now have a 2-year term, appointed by the trust board itself, invited, if you will, by the trust board, now have a 2-year term. And we've also included a requirement that trust board members be trained I forget with which frequency, to be honest, but they have to be trained, and it's pursuant really to the requirements in State Public Act 21-29. That's about all I have to tell you on that. And feel free to ask Bob and me all the questions you want. Amina did a lot of work on this, but we didn't want to bother her the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So, but she proofread it, as actually we have a debt to Jill Oberlander as well, who did a lot of proofreading for us. Anybody have questions? No. Does anybody from the public wish to ask about the declaration of trust? No. Okay, so with that, do you object to us closing this item? No objections. This item is now closed. And with that, we have closed the hearing and we may go into our decision mode. Mr. Basili has abandoned us, so he's good. Didn't even say happy Thanksgiving. Would you write him an email and tell him we wanted a happy Thanksgiving before he left?
We need to leave Mr. Basili alone. He takes enough abuse.
Well said. Well said.
He's like my favorite court reporter ever.
Oh, but it's just.
He is my favorite court reporter.
We don't miss
ever.
an opportunity to.
No, but he has such. He has such a good sense of humor, and he's such a good sport. And he's definitely the jolliest one we've ever had. Okay, so if we're going to go into decision mode, how would you guys like to proceed? You want to start from the top and go to number 3?
My only suggestion, Madam Chair, is since I have to recuse from the Riverside one.
We'll do it last for you, just because we're nice.
I would be grateful.
And then since I'm not allowed to rib Mr. Basili anymore, can I rib you instead?
Of course you can.
I need a target.
Rib the bee people today. It's all good.
Okay. All right. So with that, is that good? Mr. McRae has a deer in the headlights look.
No, I'm
I was asleep.
Okay,
sorry,
so
I shouldn't
we
have said
did,
that too.
Yeah, well, we did Calhoun, MCRO, correct? That's the.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Make sure I got the right stuff
And
here in front of me.
Again,
Yes, that's it.
reminding everybody on this application, the seated members are Albin, McRae, Lowe, Barilak, and Yeski.
Okay. Text amendment, MRCO PLPZ 2021-330. This amendment will modify section 6115 of the town's building zone regulations and create a new managed residential community overlay zone, MRCO. Additionally, modifying section 6-99, conversion to accessory housing of the building zone regulations. Commission finds that the suggested revisions are in keeping with objective 2.3 and 2.3A of the 2019 POCD. Therefore, a motion to approve the text amendment as proposed.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barilak has seconded. I will take a voice vote and Mr. McRae.
Aye.
Lowe.
Aye.
Barilak.
Aye.
Yeski.
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, it passes 5-0. We now go to JS Land 2 LLC and Greenwich Runaway LLC at 33 and 35 John Street for the proposed final resub.
One gets skipped. That one got skipped.
We skipped Riverside because we're going to do it at the end because we're
Yes.
nice.
Thank
you. In the holiday spirit, all right? Whatever that means. 33 and 35 John Street, application PLPZ 2021-441, final subdivision. Applicant has requested a final re-subdivision to convey 2 acres of land from lot 2R 35 John Street to lot 1R 33 John Street in the R4 zone. Commission find the application meets the standards of section 258, et cetera, and 6302 of the town Greenwich subdivision regulations and section 205 of the building zone regulations. It is neither a subdivision or re-subdivision. Conservation issued comments on for 2020, indicating no objection. Zoning issue comments on 11/1/21 indicating issues with the access easement at the 36 John Street. DPW issue comments on 10/28 indicating notes to be added to the recorded map. Health Department issued comments dated 10/28 with no objection to the proposal. And Wetlands issued a permit needs questionnaire dated 10/1/21 indicating regulated wetlands on the site, but no permit is required for the proposed conveyance of land. Therefore, motion to approve the application noting the following. The standard note concerning drainage facilities shall be added to the map. And the applicant shall adhere to all applicable sections of the previous approvals concerning these lots. And the applicant to address any outstanding staff or interdepartmental issues.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Lowe has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
Mr. McRae?
Aye.
Mr. Lowe?
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. And we go to Greenwich Medical Spa for the zoning text amendment. This is again all the regular members and Mr. McRae.
Okay. Okay, text amendment, Medical Spa PLPZ 2021-482. The applicant is seeking to amend the definitions of section 65A to define medical spa and include said use under section 6100 use group 4. The commission finds the suggested revisions are in keeping with objective 5.2A and 6.4D of the 2019 POCD. Motion to approve the text amendment as proposed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's try that again. I really couldn't tell.
Second.
Okay, Lowe seconded?
Yeah.
All right. And with that, Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Levy?
Aye.
McRae?
Aye.
Lowe?
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. And we go to the final site plan and special permit for Greenwich Medical Spa. Mr. McRae?
1233 East Putnam Avenue, application PLPZ 2021-364. Final site plan special permit, applicant seeking approval to convert ground level parking space to medical office space in the LB and R7 zones. The applicant is, whereas the applicant appeared before the commission as a pre-application PLPZ 2021-215 on June 8th, 21, which requires this review prior to filing any special permit. The applicant has been granted approval to amend the definitions of section 65A to define a medical spa and include said use under section 6100 use group 4. Commission finds that the medical use spa and amended section 600 will allow for first floor occupancy. Zoning issued comments on September 21st, 21, indicating the proposal meets the requirements of the BZR and endorse the project for zoning permit sign off. Sewer Division issued comments dated 11/4, indicating no concerns to be addressed during P&Z review phase. Engineering issued comments on 9/22, indicating approval for zoning permit. The ARC issued comments at their 9/22 meeting, noting the architecture does not return and notes on signage and lighting. Beta issued comments on 9/22/21, indicating the parking analysis is acceptable. Wetlands issued the permit needs questionnaire on 8/11/21, indicating no action required. The Health Department issued comments to the applicant on 10/8/21, indicating department licensing policies. Therefore, a motion to approve the application noting the following. Prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall return to ARC for review of final lighting, signage, and landscaping. The applicant shall adhere to all applicable sections of approvals granted under site plan special permit PLPZ 2012-500 and 501. And the applicant shall address any and all other remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, it's Lowe again by a nose. No, a big nose. No, sorry.
It's not that big.
Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
I want to hear Mr. Lowe's. No, aye.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
Mr. McRae?
Aye.
And Mr. Lowe.
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. Quick consult for you, Katie, since Bob and I worked on the declaration of trust. When we go to that, should I just recuse and have from voting, or is it okay if
Oh,
I vote?
no. This is just moving something forward. You're not the ultimate authority on it. So I think it would be very appropriate for you to take action on
Just
it.
making sure we do things right. Okie dokie. So Mr. McRae?
Yeah, you're gonna have to help me on this one because this is, I don't think we've ever done this before. But
Yes,
let
we
me-
did this. It's the same thing we did with the ordinance. We hereby move it forward.
Yeah.
We hereby
Okay.
move the proposed declaration.
Am I in reverse? Okay, so declaration of trust, Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Whereas the Planning and Zoning Commission, in conjunction with others, has established a Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund pursuant to the provisions of Section 7, 148, so on and so forth, the Connecticut General Statutes. The commission notes that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund ordinance approved by the RTM on 9/27/21 requires that a proposed declaration of trust be submitted to the RTM within 90 days of the approval of the ordinance. The commission finds that. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
This declaration of trust is consistent with the ordinance approved. The language is consistent with the ordinance approved, and I think we should say with the objectives of the POCD.
Okay,
I like that.
great.
To
Therefore,
diversify our housing stock. I don't remember the number. I just remember the words.
Good luck with this.
therefore, exactly. You're done.
All right. Okay. So do I have a second?
Wait, I didn't even make this.
Oh, okay. Well, we want to go home and bake pies.
Okay, so therefore, the Planning and Zoning Commission refers the Declaration of Trust, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, to the Board of Selectmen for consideration.
Perfect. Do I have a second? Oh, they don't like it.
I'll second even though I'm not seated.
Well, you're not seated. You can't second.
I'm gonna embarrass somebody else in a second.
All right, Lowe seconded. Okay, Lowe has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McRae,
Aye.
Lowe,
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. Goodbye and a happy day of gratitude, Mr. Barilak. We'll be in touch.
Wait, Mr. Laurel, do you have things? You're muted.
I thought you were ending the meeting. I was more concerned you were ending the meeting, but
No.
happy Thanksgiving,
Ending
Mr.
my
Barilak.
part of the meeting. That's it.
Just
Double,
him.
double, everybody.
I just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving explicitly to you. That's all.
Thank
So-
you.
Yeah, happy day of
Thanksgiving, Bob.
gratitude.
And to all
Hey,
of you.
we've got a lot to be grateful for this year. We're here,
You got it. You got
so we're grateful. All
And
right,
we're
you
not
guys.
there.
Enjoy your
Happy
holidays, guys.
Thanksgiving, Bob.
Bye. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
and we get
Bye.
to be home for meetings. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, we're not there.
We're not there.
We're not where we appear.
Yeah.
Mr. Laurel, you've got what Mrs. Alban said about the whereases for the trust fund?
Yeah.
Okay,
He's good.
I'm having issues. I have
Oh,
no idea what Mr. Hegley was saying before as well.
But one thing is, Patrick, Katie, I promised, and I copied Pat on this today or yesterday. I promised Barbara Hines that we would send it to her, what we've done tomorrow morning. So she's not slammed on Monday morning, but she also needs 5 hard copies, which I don't have the wherewithal to get her.
Yeah, we'll
And-
get it to her.
Okay, yeah, well, last time I had to send, I forgot, and Mark had to go galloping off to deliver it, and now we got no Mark. So, okay, so with that, we go to Riverside Yacht Club.
Okay, there it is.
Hey, what are you
What
guys
are-
gonna do with the evening off? It's only 8 o'clock. Oh, baked pies, I forgot, go ahead.
You want the short list?
Go ahead.
102 Club Road, PLPZ 2021 435, final coastal site plan special permit. The applicant is seeking approval to construct a 2,888 square foot addition to existing clubhouse building in a coastal overlay zone, a coastal overlay, flood hazard overlay, and underlying RA1 zone per section 611 of the building zone regulations and sections 22A 90 and 22A 96 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Whereas the applicant appeared to the commission as a pre-application PLPZ 2021-291 on January 15th, 21, which requires this review prior to filing any special permit. The Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals at their September 8th, 21 meeting granted variance of section 6139 in the flood hazard overlay zone. And the subject property straddles the AE12, AE13, and BE14 flood zone and has direct frontage on Coscoff Harbor. The commission finds that zoning issue comments on November 17th indicating proposal meets the requirements of the BZR and endorse the project for zoning permit sign off. Sewer division issue comments dated 11/18/21 noting concerns to be addressed during P&Z phase. Engineering, the applicant submitted a drainage exemption dated August 18th, 21. ARC issued comments at their 9/22/21 meeting indicating approval as submitted. Conservation issued comments dated 11/16/21 with recommendations to the plan. And DEEP issued comments at their 9/22 indicating approval as no comments to the plan. Therefore, a motion to approve the application noting the following. The applicant owner submitted a signed letter to planning and zoning staff acknowledging receipt of the sewer division comments and that the applicant owner has read all the comments and agrees there to adhere to those requirements. Planning and zoning staff is to provide a copy of the signed acknowledgement to the sewer division for their records. The applicant shall adhere to any and all applicable requirements outlined under previous administrative and P&Z decision letters. We had actually talked about the conservation comments.
Yeah, the applicant has agreed to provide organic. Okay, so
there were 2 points.
There were 2 points, and I erased one of them.
Hold on.
No, I'm coming. Hold on.
It was organics, and then
I got it. So the applicant has agreed to install additional planting for local pollinators, additional flowering species supportive of coastal life. And then they were not so crazy about the lawn going all the way to the edge of the title. But the applicant also affirms that they are using all organic pesticides and shall continue to do so.
Okay, so they've agreed to point 1 of the conservation letter.
Yes, and they are confirming that they have historically and will continue to use organic pesticides.
Point 2 of their letter, okay.
Well, the real point 2 was that they wanted a no-mow zone, and
yeah, okay.
I
think we had talked about lighting, but that's been resolved, and so I think the applicant shall address any remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
Mr. McRae?
Aye.
Mr. Yeski?
You already asked me.
Oh, Mr. Lowe. I always do that. One time I get you.
You change your mind. No?
Hey, I'm not Italian or Irish.
Mr. Lowe.
Yeski too. Aye. Lowe.
Worst thing was I was looking at Lowe, and Alban, who still remembers her name most of the time, is also aye. And with that, the motion passes 5-0. You know, I go into autopilot. I forget what.
Wait a minute. How did Mr. Yeski vote? No.
Okay, so happy Turkey Day to everybody. Happy Turkey Day.
You too. And I
want to say a special thank you to Patrick for this mercifully brief encounter this evening. Thank you. I am grateful.
Well, good job.
The beginning.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
I understand.
There will be a full flogging at the next
meeting.
meeting.
And may God bless us all.
That one, Peter, that one's going into the book. Mercifully brief. I like that.
It was mercifully brief, except in the beginning when all of you were saying, why don't we have a clock on this? We need to limit.
No. Some of you were saying all the neighbors moved away.
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay, Katie, let's like never say that to the commission again.
I'm just
Everybody, that was the
reporting
second.
what I'm told.
It was like, okay, so nobody moved. And if they did, they're speaking.
Yeah.
So,
They're
all
still
right,
there.
everybody.
Have a wonderful break.
Merry
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to try turning off my computer and back on, Pat, but I updated Zoom today and it was clearly struggling.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Zoom's got, and I've got that bug when it just has weird little glitches that happen with it. But whatever, we survived. That's all that matters.
Well, it seemed to be working better, so yeah.
Can we
recording stopped.
Can we talk about those 6 bottles of wine that are at my house? Are you driving home tomorrow?
I can. I thought you dropped them off in our office.
No, I didn't. They've been there since May.
I will absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to put them on my porch. What time are you going to go into the office tomorrow?
I have to, unfortunately. Yeah. I will let you know what time I'll be coming. Yeah. No, well, you know what? Anytime after 2:00, I'll be probably coming back around.
Oh, okay. So anytime after 2, and then they'll be in your car for 5 months.
That's exactly. Do you know who's missing them?
No, and one of the people has left.
Well,
because Mark didn't come to the party.
He didn't that time? Okay, well, that's fine. All right.
I don't think so. I think he had a problem right at the end and didn't. And Jackie, I know for sure didn't come.
I think because she was at home leave. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But you could just see, and I don't know if anybody ever gave Katie hers.
Well, that's
you
fair.
could just ask people. They'll be honest. Who didn't come to the,
No,
I just wanted to do it before the year was
well,
up.
I didn't want to embarrass anybody, for shaming them for not coming. But now that they're getting guests, they'll probably be.
Yeah. Well, they all know that the wine has been sitting in my mudroom for 5 months or 6 months.
It's temperature controlled, so that's good. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Okie doke. Bye.
Bye.